Yo, 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 what is up, everybody? Chris here, Fake Sports News, Access Rotation, however the flip you know me on these interwebs. And today I'm going to be bringing you guys a quick preview of what to expect going into the kickoff of our 2026 CDL season with Optic Texas taking on the Riyadh Falcons, etc., etc. So without further ado, let's look at our competitive settings V1 for this season. So our maps are Colossus, Den, Exposure, Raid, and Scar for S&D. Our overload maps are Den, Exposure, and Scar. And our HPs are Blackheart, which I believe got removed, Colossus, Den, Exposure, and Scar. So these are all the restricted items. Settings are as you would expect, pretty standard CDL settings. So let's move on to the next few things. Housekeeping. So Major 1 is in Dallas, hosted by Optic Texas, as per usual now. Major 1 hosted by Dallas, Optic, whatever you want to call them. Birmingham, UK. So we're going back to the UK for Major 2. And it's a 10-team major. It's going to be the first one ever. Then Major 3, my hometown, Atlanta, Georgia, is hosting Major 3, which is going to be, I believe, DreamHack, and it's a Pro-Am. So maybe I'll be playing and maybe I'll be there. Who knows? Then Major 4 is in Paris. So oui, baguette. And then Champs will be in Vegas, and it'll be hosted by Faze Vegas, the scumbag bastards who left my hometown and then chose to host Champs as soon as they leave, even though we did not have a singular event outside of the inaugural MW season. So it is what it is. But without further ado, let's get into some of the changes. So we're going to have our first 10-team major at Major 2, and then we're going to have round-robin matches during the qualifier stage where all teams will face each other across a 6-week span, which is pretty exciting. We're also going to have the Pro-Am Classic for Major 3. We're going to have 2 minors as opposed to the proposed 3 that most of us thought were coming. Yeah, and also we will have Overload introduced into the mix. So this is the schedule for all of our online quals and the major tournaments that will follow. And it should be a pretty fun year overall. So let's look at let's look at the teams, right? So checking out the different teams, here we are. So looking at the Boston Breach, we of course have Snoopy, Cammy, Purge, their new pickup, Nasty, Shawnee, and Magic as the coaching staff. If you guys didn't know, Snoopy, Cammy, and Purge, they were a trio with, of course, Awakening, but Wake isn't challengers. The Royal Ravens, they retained Slasher, picked up Nero from G2, picked up Lurks, who's a challenge player, Lurk, however you pronounce it, and Craze, who played for Omit at EWC. And then Brian Sand is still the coach. So Cloud9 New York, they cleaned house, and then they brought back Mac, who played for them last season. And then they brought in Vivid, his teammate on Omit to end the year in Challengers last year. Beans, who of course played for Toronto famously last season before Merck came into the league and shook everything up. And then Afro, who has been a player in the Pro League many a time. Vegas Faze, rebrand, Simp and Draza were retained, even though Draza actually technically did leave and explore his options. LA Thieves was a place he was thought to maybe be going, but didn't pan out, obviously. And then they brought in the young guns, 04 and Abezy, who have been a nasty duo for a little while. Crowder and RJ are still coaches. G2 Minnesota, they look pretty good. Estriel, of course, retained. Kremp came in from C9. Mamba came from Omit Brooklyn. And then Skies, of course, was on Optic towards the end of the season. He started on LAG, but he was brought on to really revitalize this team alongside Coach Looney. LA Thieves, of course, had Scrap and Hydra from last year. They retained them, dropped Dan and Envoy, of course, replaced them with Kenny, world champ, 2-time world champ, talked to him nice, and Abezy, another 2-time world champ. So they're hoping they can get Hydra and Scrap over the hump with a plethora of world champions on the roster to hopefully teach them how to win when it really matters. On the Miami Heretics side, we, of course, had the surprising departure of Real. I had a video done on that, but I just never got around to posting it. So he left for the Toronto Koi, which I will talk about in a second. But the Miami Heretics are Metals, Rancor, Super, Trakes, a player that I'm very excited to see. My friend coached him in LATAM. And of course, Methods, the coach. Optic Texas are defending world champions and EWC winners. Shotzi, Dashi, Hook, Mercules, Karma, and JP, they retained. Only team in the CDL to actually retain their 4. So that brings me to Paris Gentlemates, that being Envoy, Sib, Gosi, Neptune, and Coach Mayhem. Then we have the Riyadh Falcons. Well, let me just explain. So to end the year, it was Lunars, Johnny, Kismet, and who was their fourth? It doesn't matter. But anyways, they cleaned house, and now it's Envoy, Sib, Ghosty, Neptune, and Mayhem. And then the Riyadh Falcons are, of course, Exnid and Pred, who were retained from last season towards the end. Celium was brought in as a big free agent signing, and the Bulldog Kismet was let off the leash. So he came over from the Gentlemates side, and now he is on the Riyadh Falcons. Now, Toronto Koi is Kleenex, Insight, Joe Deceives, and Real, who they picked up. Of course, Kleenex, Insight, and Joe Deceives were on the team last year. They retained that trio, and they brought in a nasty SMG in Real. So we'll see how that goes. Vancouver Surge fully cleaned house. No Neptune, no Abezy, no 4, no Nasty. Instead, this year they started fresh with Abe, a rookie, Lunars, who played for LAG last season, Gwyn, who of course is on the Carolina Royal Ravens, Legend, who is a Halo player, Halo World Champion, was on a 5P until, of course, Shopify Rebellion came in and ruined everything for them. And then they are coached by Atura and Joker. So without further ado, let's get into lay pick'ems. As you guys can see, I am ranked number 25 in the world from the entirety of last year. Let's look at it major by major. 139, 129, 26, 23. That's not good. 93. And then, yeah, we're not going to talk about champs. So, as you guys can see, I finished the year as 25th on the leaderboards. So, without further ado, let's get into the actual predictions that I'm going to make now. So, looking at Friday's matches, that of course being tomorrow's matches at my time of recording. Yeah, I know early recordings are important or something, but yeah, it's me. You know, I'm not doing that. Anyways, we have the defending world champs, Optic Texas, taking on the guy who they won a world championship with, ironically, last year, Pred, on the Vegas Falcons. I'm sorry, the Riyadh Falcons. And of course, Celium is now on that team as well. So is Kismet. Great team, but they also have to carry Exnid. So I'm going to say 3-1 for the defending world champs. Not sure where I expect Falcons to get a map somewhere, but I expect them to get a map somewhere. So I just don't like 3-0s that much, especially not in season openers. Anything can happen. Riyadh will be looking to definitely stake a claim and make a name. And yeah, that's why I don't want to bet on a 3-0 there. Boston Breach versus the Carolina Royal Ravens. New look Boston Breach. I feel like they're going to be a little bit more disciplined, but they also might get heavily dominated in the slang. I like what I've seen from the rookie Lurks, however you pronounce it. Slasher's going to have him whipped into shape. I think this has Game 5 written all over it, but I think it'll go the way of the Boston Breach. I just slightly like that team a little bit more, even though both teams have been struggling, it must be said, in what we've seen in preliminary comp. So last matchup of the day, we have Vegas Faze, the team that I no longer support. If you guys did not know, I stopped supporting Faze when they moved out of my hometown of Atlanta. And yeah, I mean, I'm not going to root against them, but I'm also not going to supremely root for them at this point. Just based on what I've been seeing from Kenny and all of that, I'm going to go with a 3-1 in favor of Faze here. I'm sorry, 3-2 in favor of Faze. I think Game 5 ice comes through for them. But I've just been seeing a lot of struggles from Ken in the respawns for their scrims in terms of the results. Obviously, don't take scrims that seriously if there's anything I've stressed on this channel over the years, but they do tell you something, right? Typically, if a guy's just not performing well, he's just not performing well, right? So, yeah, that's why I think it'll be a 3-2 for Faze. I feel like they are just a little bit ahead of LA Thieves. I think that could change and that should change, but right now, just feel like they're a little bit more ahead. Now, our next matchup, we have the Miami Heretics taking on Toronto Koi. And if you guys didn't know why this is the Monster Energy double point matchup of the day here, Toronto actually stole Real from Miami in the middle of the night. He had a verbal agreement to re-sign with Miami, and Toronto, they snuck in the witching hour and stole him. The two owners, Ibai, the owner of, I believe, Koi, has beef with the owner of Heretics, which is, I believe, I forget who it is, but they're really famous guys in Spain, super, super well-known influencers, and that's why the beef is so real. But I do think that the Toronto Koi boys, I feel like they're just a little bit better right now. I feel like that Miami team has a lot of potential to be great, but I feel like Toronto Koi, just with the firepower and the early game appearance, looks like a Game 5 victory for them. First showing of LAG that we'll see in the CDL officially after winning the Case on LAN, going up against a Vancouver Surge side that decidedly is a question mark, right? You have Legend coming from Halo, you have Gwyn, who had kind of a rough year last year. He looked pretty good, but that Carolina team was helpless. Lunars, of course, was on the LAG team that was very helpless. And Abe, I mean, he looked solid at EWC, but we've only seen him once. So I think it'll be LAG dub unless Vancouver Surge have been looking considerably better in scrims than I know as of my last bit of checking in. I expect this to be a pretty easy LAG dub. Cloud9 versus G2. This should be a really fun one. This should be a sneaky fun one. G2 is a lot better than a lot of people are going to expect them to be, but this will be a pretty tight matchup. I'm going to say 3-2 just because I feel like this Cloud9 team is a lot better than most people expect them to be, just based on what we've seen from them early stage so far. And I think this G2 team is definitely a lot better than a lot of people expected them to be, right? Skies is having a resurgence, and all the other guys on that team, Mamba, Estriel, and of course Nero, they are just looking great. So I expect them to pull out a pretty tight dub. I feel like all the maps in that series are going to be close, but it'll be a great one and it'll be a fun one to watch. Now, on Sunday, we of course kick things off with the LA Thieves taking on a man who potentially was going to sign with them, Celium, and of course his duo AG Pred in one of their first weekends as teammates. So I think this is where the LA Thieves will have a very tight and tumultuous struggle of a series, but I think they get a dub here. I think the Riyadh Falcons obviously have tremendous potential and they could just surprise all of us and come out really hot this weekend, go 2-0, right? But that's not super likely or super like possible in my mind, right? So I'm just going to say 3-2 LA Thieves. I think it'll be a fun series. It's opening weekend, early stage of the game. So betting on a lot of 3-0s and blowouts, while it can happen and it does happen a lot, is crazy. Now, looking at one that I definitely don't expect to be a blowout, we have Faze taking on the LAG boys. I think this one goes to game 5, but I think LAG take it. They just took the case on Invitational. You guys see I'm not a Faze fan anymore because I'm actively going against them when I see them losing. Yeah, but I see LAG making not easy work of this one, but I just feel like they are a better team right now. And honestly, they were one of my favorite teams to be like a top 2 team all year long, just because I felt like this team, and I said it on Reddit like throughout the off season, I feel like people were underrating them because in this community, people get way too bogged down with the idea of one fight and this team's going to blow up. But I'm like, Sib and Ghosty on the same team, problem. Then you had a Neptune and Envoy, big problem. So yeah, they've shown me a lot so far that tells me that they're probably going to be a really good team no matter what the game looks like. And yeah, that's why I like them here to win against a Vegas Faze that's decidedly trying to find their footing. Now, last matchup of the weekend, we have Optic Texas taking on G2 Minnesota in a surprising banger that no one will expect to be a banger, but absolutely will be a banger. You have Skies taking on his old team. Any other storylines on that G2 team? You got, nah, just Skies taking on his old team and some of his buddies. But yeah, it should be a pretty fun one. I feel like Optic will definitely take this one, defending world champs and all that. So yeah, be sure to tune in, guys. Hope you enjoy all of the matches. And yeah, before I go, let me just give you guys my quick little prize picks. If you do prize picks this weekend, I don't have a promo code or anything. I'm not going to play any prize picks, but people always ask me about them. So I'm including this in here just for the people who directly reach out and ask. Sell, I'm going to say Sell. And what's a good pair? Merc's going to steal a lot of the kills. So I would say Sell and Merc if you're going for a pretty easy map one, series one pick. And then for series two, Snoopy's the obvious one, right? Going up against a Carolina team that's decidedly probably going to struggle a little bit. And then if you want to get a little bit froggy, you could pick Craze. But personally, I would pick Nero just because Nero is a really good player and he consistently gets high kills even when his team sucks. So that's why I picked Nero. And then last but not least, we're going to pick the pimp, Simp the pimp, as always, and we're going to pick his buddy, Ernie, Scrap, whatever you want to call him. And that should be a nice little 6-man. If you play it, let me know how it goes for you. I don't really do this kind of stuff anymore, but if I was going to play it, I would put $1 down. If you put $1 down on a power, it could win you 22. Again, this is just for the people who ask me for this stuff. A lot of people asking for prize picks and stuff. I don't do it anymore, but I will give it to you guys if you ask. And then for map ones, Pred is always free for the most part. And then if you want to go crazy, Pred and Shotzi. Then for map one, alternate picks, I would say Nero's line is pretty high. I would take a chance on Lurk, his SMG duo. I feel like it's a pretty decent line, and I feel like you could definitely clear that. And then for Boston, if you want to take a Boston player, I would definitely take Snoop. I would take Snoop and not Lurk if you're feeling kind of froggy about how it could go, because there's a chance that Lurk doesn't get the kills. And there's also just a good chance that Boston blow him out, right? So, and then for the last one, I would say for map one, 04 is a little bit risky. Abuza's been frying. That's not a bad pick. He's been absolutely frying. I would say Abuza's a pretty safe one. I'll say Abuza, and I'll say that boy Ernie. I'll say scrap. So yeah, that'll just about wrap it up for me, guys. Just wanted to get you guys some prize picks for the people who DM me asking about them usually. And yeah, hope you guys enjoy all the COD action this weekend. It's good to be back. Gonna lock in my picks, and I will see you guys with some highlights actually this weekend. Thanks for all the love on the highlights. You guys have given me like 5,000 views in the last week on the highlights and stuff. So keep going crazy. I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys on the next one. Hope you have a great morning, noon, or night, like I said before. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Once again, this is Chris from Big Source News, Axe Rotation, however the flip you know me. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.